Welcome to the Big O Show on the Overreaction Sports Network, powered by Believe.
Still the same damn kid from Oklahoma, same old dreams hanging off my shoulders, wishing and waiting on a shooting star for all to see.
And now your host, straight out of Oklahoma, former Buffalo Bill, Jerry Ostroski.
I'm still the same damn kid from Oklahoma.
What's up, Bills Mafia? Welcome to the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network. We are powered by Believe. I am Jerry Ostroski, former Buffalo Bills offensive lineman, and it's once again time for the Big O Show, a show about the Buffalo Bills by a former Buffalo Bill. And on today's episode, we're going to discuss possible draft scenarios. We're going to talk about possibly trading up in the first round, looking at trading back or staying put. But we're going to kind of get into some of these formulas and different things that teams have used over the past so many years to calculate the value of draft picks. And one of the things that teams still use was brought around in 1993 by Jimmy Johnson, then of the Dallas Cowboys, is this kind of draft value chart, giving value to every pick in the draft, and then using that value and all those different scenarios to come up with compensation for either moving up or moving down in the draft. So obviously, you know, the Buffalo Bills, they've got a bunch of draft picks this year. They've got the 30th pick in the first round. They've got number 56 and 62 in the second. They got none in the third. And I think that's something that Brandon Beane will probably trying to do, going to try to figure out a way to get back into that third round because there's tons of value in this 2025 draft in the third round. Lots of value at positions of need for the Buffalo Bills. Then you look at the fourth round, they've got number 109 and 132. Fifth round, they're looking at 169, 170, and 173. And in the sixth round, they're picking at 177 and 206. So you look at this whole thing and you look at this scenario, and obviously Bills' needs, I believe their number one need is another corner to tandem with Christian Benford. Benford, obviously, just given that huge contract extension, just an awesome move by Brandon Beane and the Bills organization to get him tied up below value, about $19 million a year. If this scenario would have went into 2026, some feel that could have gone up in the $25 million a year range, also possibly up into the $30 million a year range. So getting Benford locked up, one of the top cornerbacks in the NFL over the past couple of years, a guy that's been a little banged up, but injury concerns aren't such that you don't want to re-sign a player of his caliber. Buffalo gets him locked up for 4 more years. He will be under the age of 30 and probably go ahead and get another big contract in the NFL if he continues to climb the way he has his first 3 years in Buffalo. Also, you look at interior defensive line. Bills are in need of some defensive tackles. Definitely a dominant run player, but also a guy that brings some pass rush ability. And then also you look at defensive end, possibly safety, but I'd have to say defensive end and edge rusher, whether it be a combo guy like Groot, or you go ahead and look at the more linebacker type defensive ends, guys that are smaller, say 6'3", 245-ish, speed dudes that get a lot of sacks because of athletic ability and athletic mismatches outside. Lots of possibilities at defensive end as well. So we're going to talk about the draft trade value calculator here in a second. We're also going to get into if we do move up into the first round. I think there's a few players, if they slip into that 15 to 20 range, the Bills could get a big-time player in this draft and by trading up in the first round with not a ton of penalty, I think they have a lot of value sitting there. So let's look at that scenario as we get through today's show. And as always, folks, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, review the shows, tell your friends. We are rolling in the right direction, and that's because of you, the viewer, the listener, and we appreciate you as always. But real fast, I want to bring something up. 1993, Jimmy Johnson, he brings this to the league. And what this is, and if you look at it, and all the Bills picks in this draft are highlighted in green. If you look at it, this is a value chart. So every pick in the draft has been given a value. And right now, the Bills draft capital, they have 1,458.6 points with all of the picks that they have in this year's draft. So if you look at this, chart, if you can see it, the Bills' 30th pick is worth 620 points. Their second round pick, number 62, is worth 284. Obviously, 56 is worth 340. You'd like to try to hold on to that higher second round pick if you're making trades to try to move up. So we talked about a little bit earlier. I think 15 is kind of where the Bills could possibly get to. 15, you might have to give up maybe a pick more than you want, maybe 2 picks more than you want. But if the right player is there, you're willing to make that move. So right now, if you were to say the Bills wanted to move to 15, and like we talked about earlier in the show, I will get into some players, some cornerbacks, some defensive linemen that the Bills could covet, and we'll talk about them. I'll give you some things that Daniel Jeremiah, the NFL Network, has said. I've looked at some of them on film. Really, really high-value players, guys who would be tremendous choices for Buffalo if they're there. And like I said, 15, I think, is kind of the realistic range where maybe Buffalo could get up into. So, like, you're looking at the 15 to 20 range in this year's draft for a player that the Bills really, really covet. So if you look at pick 15 on this chart, it's worth 1,050 points. Bills sitting at the 30th pick overall. That draft pick is worth, like I said earlier, 620 points. If you add number 62, which is worth 284, that gives you a value of 904. So a little bit less than 1050. And now some of these, believe me, this chart is fluid. It's not gospel, okay? So you could possibly, you're going to get a trade done. Some people get it done for a little less than what that draft pick value is worth. Some might give a little bit more because they really covet a player at that spot. But you're kind of in that range. If you give up 30 at 620, and then you give up the second round pick, which is 62, which is worth 284, that gives you 904. Probably not quite enough to get it done. I think the Bills would probably have to throw in one of their 4th round picks or 5th round picks to get you close enough to market value to make that trade if you use the true draft value chart, which we have on the screen right now, which, a lot of people believe it's still used, and I do believe that a lot of GMs still use this formula for looking at value within the draft. So I think if they move to 15, they'd probably have to move 3 picks, and really probably anywhere in that 15 to 20 range, they would probably have to move 3 picks. Now, here's something else that you can look at. Another thing you can get into is the Bills could possibly move down. So if you're looking at Buffalo to try to do something like they did last year, again, we look at that pick at number 30. It's worth 620 draft value points. If you want to move into that top 3 to 5 of the second round, Cleveland is a team that's looking to move around. The Giants, I believe, are looking to move around. Those picks are worth 580 and I believe 560 when I look at the chart. Now, if you are Buffalo and you're willing to move down, I think there's one thing that you demand, and it's something that you have to have done, And that's as if you look at that round 3 column, there is no green. That's because we don't have a pick in the 3rd round. I believe if Buffalo moves out of number 1 into number 2 and they go up high into the 2nd round, which I think is the only scenario that they would do, like last year when they move out of their pick and then they get the first pick of the 2nd round, which they used to take Keon Coleman, I think the Bills have to demand a 3rd round pick. So, these scenarios are there and they're discussed. And I know that, organizations will go into meetings and they will go ahead and go through every scenario. So that's the draft value deal. You can find it online if you want to get a copy of it. You want to mess with it. You want to come up with some of your own scenarios as far as the draft goes. I know there's a lot of people that do a ton of mock drafts. I'll do a mock draft before the actual draft this year here on the Big O Show. We'll also get into some more prospects. I've got a bunch of cut-ups and film. I'm looking at different prospects, especially at the defensive line position, with some players that can help the Buffalo Bills. So I told you earlier, I think that if the right player is there for the Bills in that 15 to 20 range and you can make a trade, and you're looking at teams like Atlanta. I think Atlanta is a team that you could possibly really do some things with because Atlanta needs draft picks. Atlanta does not have as many picks as they'd like, so I think they would be a willing trade participant. Now, are they willing to give up their 15th pick? Don't know. That's to be seen. But I think that if you're going to go ahead and trade up and give a team like Atlanta that is got a draft pick deficit in this draft, and you'll give them 3 picks, I think that's the Falcons need to listen to that. I think I also believe Arizona's in that range. So there are some teams that I think would be willing to work with the Bills. Trade up targets. If you're going to do this, you got to really be sold on the person that you are trading up for. This is a scenario where if you're trading up to get this guy, more than likely, this is a person that you expect to start on your football team this season. Not a project guy, not a dude with a ton of question marks or things of that nature. You've got to be willing to, if you move up in this range, this is a starter day one. And I think there are a few players out there that fit that mold. I personally think the Bills need to get a bookend cornerback with their first pick. I think a bookend corner is a vital, vital piece for this team. I think there's enough defensive line talent that they can go into round 2, do some different things, and get some players. And we'll go through those players that I like in future shows. But here's some of the trade-up targets that I think are viable options for the Buffalo Bills if they were to move up into that 15 to 20 range. If these guys actually slip, now they have to slip down this low. That's the other part of this thing, especially if you're wanting a cornerback and all of a sudden there's a run on corners. You might have to be willing to make that move to move up. If you're wanting a defensive tackle and that's the priority and there's a run on D tackles, you've got to be willing to move up to get that guy. So my first guy that I want to talk about is my favorite cornerback right now in the 2025 draft class, and that's Jahdae Barron, the cornerback from Texas, 5'11", 194 pounds. He had a PFF grade this season of 90.7. That was third out of 848 cornerbacks in college football that they graded on PFF this year. Had just an absolutely tremendous season. This is why I like Barron. I think Barron does a couple of things for the Buffalo Bills. Barron is a guy that can be an outside corner. He can be that bookend. But like Daniel Jeremiah talks about, and these comments that I'm giving you today are Daniel Jeremiah's. I'll give you mine later in the month as we get closer to the draft. But Barron, Jeremiah calls Barron a Swiss Army knife. And, Joe Miller calls me that all the time because of the things that I did when I played offensive line. But I appreciate players that are multifaceted. I appreciate players that are able to do multiple things. And the thing about Barron is while he is a starter outside at corner, he can also go inside, play over the slot in nickel. And we know that the nickel cornerback position in Buffalo is a huge, huge emphasis in this 4-2-5 defense. And as we all know, Taron Johnson, who is a bit undersized, is not getting any younger. Over the last couple of years, has been banged up, had some injuries. So you have to start thinking about possible replacements for Taron Johnson, or if something happens to him, are you comfortable with Cam Lewis? Are you comfortable with others on your roster to take over the rest of the year? Or is Barron a guy you can bring in and then move him over the slot in your nickel package? So Daniel Jeremiah says he lined outside. He lined up in the slot. He was in the box as a dime linebacker for the Texas Longhorns, made impact plays in every game. He's a quicker than fast athlete. So some of these guys you'll hear, you talk about elite speed or top-end speed. And what speed gives you at the cornerback position, especially in man, is that ability to catch up on long route sequences. Can you flip your hips, run and sprint and catch up? Barron's more of a read through the receiver, read the eyes of the quarterback, let the route take him where he needs to be guy. Maybe not elite over-the-top speed, but fast enough. And he's got outstanding eyes and conviction. He's at his best when he can play off and see through receivers to the quarterback, like we just talked about a second ago. He reads quarterback drops, anticipates that to beat pass catchers to the ball. He doesn't waste steps, and he has outstanding hands. Wasted steps means he is technically sound. He is very, very technique sound with his feet and his body positioning at the quarterback spot. We talked about it. He lacks top-end speed, but he's always in position. He's excellent at locating and playing the football downfield. He's a ball hawk. He gets turnovers. He makes plays on the ball. Has good timing and feel as a blitzer. And as you know, Christian Benford had a couple of sacks this year, I believe. Bobby Babbage Jr. Will bring cornerbacks on a blitz. He is very comfortable blitzing the quarterback. He can adjust from pass to run. And he is a solid tackler. He is a get his shoulder in there, get his face in there, and get you on the ground. He's not a grab and drag type cornerback. He's physical. We know our corners in cover two have to play contain. They've got to be good tacklers in the running game. Benford just got paid because that is a huge part of his game. You look at Barron, he also does the same thing. Overall, Barron excels at taking the ball away, and just a tremendous player. My favorite corner in the draft this year, just because of the value he brings in that cornerback spot. And with that draft pick, you're basically moving up. If this is a target the Bills have and feel they can move up with somebody, not for a king's ransom between 15 and 20, and get a player like Barron, tremendous upside for Buffalo because he's multifaceted, he's versatile, he's a hell of a football player. I'd like Jahdae Barron of Texas, and I think he's a guy that would really, really help this Bills defense and would be a day one starter. The other cornerback that intrigues me that I think has tremendous, tremendous upside still, I don't think he's played his most complete or best football, is Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan, 6'1" and 3/4. He's 194 pounds. His PFF grade this season was 76.5, which was good enough for 139th. In 2022, he had an 88.2 PFF grade, which was good enough for 12th. As you know, it's been documented. He's had some injury issues coming off of an ACL, but still has shown through his pro day workouts. He is all the way back. Tremendous athlete. As Daniel Jeremiah says of the NFL Network, he is a big cornerback. He's easy. He has fluid movement skills. He has excellent instincts. He played outside at Michigan. He also played in the slot at Michigan. Again, notice what I'm bringing to you. Versatile corners, 4-2-5 defense, play the slot, play outside. You've got a package deal in one player. Jeremiah also goes on to say he doesn't panic. He settles on routes, can find the ball easy. He's got size. He's got tremendous length, which is big for cornerbacks. Barron probably doesn't have as much length as, say, Johnson, but he definitely has enough. You look at his 2024 game tape, there were some inconsistencies as a support player against the run. This is the one question mark I have about him. There are some questions about his deep speed as well, but I think these are some things that you overlook just because of his ability as a cover corner and a guy that can do zone and man with his length. I think he's got a tremendous amount of upside. If you look at some other things that Jeremiah said about Johnson, we talked about maybe he has some question marks in his tackling. He can alleviate any concerns about his speed during his athletic testing in the spring, which he's done. And then overall, Johnson isn't a perfect player, but he loves his blend of size and ball skills. I think Johnson has a chance to be an elite player in the NFL. So if you look at the cornerback spot, if you're going to move up, I think this is the type of player that you want to get, a Johnson or a Jahdae Barron from Texas. So let's look at some defensive tackle prospects that you can move up for in the NFL draft. If you're trying to move up, if you're the Buffalo Bills and Brandon Beane and you decide we can't risk sitting at 30, we want to go up and get this guy because we need a starter on our defense. I'd say first and foremost, a guy that's getting a tremendous amount of run by NFL draft experts. If you look at Mel Kiper's board, if you look at Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft board, they both have this player going 30th to the Buffalo Bills, although I think that might be tough for him to slip that far, and that's Kenneth Grant, the defensive tackle from Michigan, 6'4", 331 pounds. He had a PFF grade this season of 83.7, which was 25th out of all the defensive linemen this year in college football. He is massive. He's a big dude. It's funny if you look at him, he's a big upper body guy. He's got big legs, but below the knees, he's a little bit knock-kneed, kind of skinny ankled. You maybe a bit pigeon-toed. You can kind of see he's got that twitch, that athleticism. And it's funny, unless you're around it, usually players that are pigeon-toed or have that kind of a stature or stance are really twitchy, explosive type athletes. It's kind of weird, but they are. If you look at his work over 2024, he's very much a work in progress as a pass rusher. But if you watch him on film, and I've watched quite a bit of film on Kenneth Grant, he's got pass rush ability. Just needs to continue to progress, and he needs to continue to be coached up. He's got lively hands, maybe doesn't have a plan as much as he should with those hands. I think a lot of pass rushing is about process. It's about film study. It's about knowing your opponent and putting together your scenarios, putting together your process in your head before you even get into the game. And I think that's probably the biggest thing to me that keeps young players from being tremendous pass rushers early in their career. They just got to learn how to set guys up. They have to learn how to go through a process and understand, like chess, you might not beat this guy on the first pass rush, but you're setting him up for the third or the fourth. And I think Grant has that ability. Jeremiah goes on to say he flashes quick, violent hands to club, swim for wins, but far too often doesn't have a plan, stalls out, hasn't learned to harness his strength to bull rush and constantly collapse the pocket. Huge point by Jeremiah there. I think all great pass rushers, the number one thing they can do well is bull. They have a great bull rush. All great pass rushers are built off of a great bull rush because as an offensive lineman, as a former offensive lineman, if you have to worry about getting run over, a lot of times you get your feet set in the ground and you kind of set yourself to take on that bull. And next thing you know, you got chopped, whatever, and the guys by you because they set you up with a great bull rush. But if you look at his run defender ability, He easily holds the point of attack. I've seen that on film. He can play double teams. He can hop backside gap and retrace down the line of scrimmage. He can get over top of reach blocks and string things out as well. He does play with a bit of high pad level, but his just overall physical ability and strength allow him to win those one-on-one and two-on-one reps. Plays with great effort, has awareness in the screen game. He runs down a ton of screens on film. If you watch his film, you can see it. If you want to see a game that Grant flashes with the ability that he has, watch their 2024 game against USC. He's going to have to figure out a way to bottle that performance and bring it every week. But overall, he's got a little bit of things or a few things to work on, but his physical tools are worth the investment. His physical tools are extreme. He's got things you can't coach, is what that comes down to. And I really like Grant. I think he's a good player. I think he'd be a guy that, especially if there's a run on D tackles, you'd be willing to trade up for. Now, obviously, if he keeps slipping, not necessarily know if he does land at number 30 for the Bills, but maybe he falls down later than 20 and the Bills can trade up without as much draft capital, like we showed on the list earlier. Next guy that you could possibly see the Bills trading up for would be a guy like Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle out of Oregon, 6'4 and a half, 313 pounds. I like Grant more than I like Harmon. I think Harmon's a viable guy. I'm not as high on Harmon as some others are, and the main reason why is he is a high-hipped defensive lineman. You can be long, but your levers are short, meaning, you're one of these guys 6'4", 6'5". Well, basically like myself, I'm 6'4", but my inseam of my jeans is only 30, 32. So short legs, long torso. That's physics, folks. It's leverage. It's all those things. It keeps you on balance. Center of gravity is lower. Harmon's kind of the opposite of that. He's a long-legged, high-hip guy. But he is quick. He's disruptive. He plays with great instincts, as Jeremiah says. Daniel Jeremiah also goes on to say he's a pass rusher, quick hands to knock away the punch of opposing linemen. He's got a club rip move that helps him win quickly. He flashes an occasional bull rush. But again, like Grant, like to see more of that. Against the run, he's very aware, avoids getting displaced by down blocks. He can anchor down versus double teams, excels at shooting gaps, disrupt, and redirect runners. Overall, Harmon has a good feel for the game and can create a lot of havoc despite lacking elite traits. So if the Bills were to get him or move up to get him, no issues if they trade up to get him. And like we talked about, this episode's about the Bills possibly moving up, and then you can also see him moving down as well. But this is a trade scenario show. So Harmon out of Oregon, another viable option. The guy that got me juiced up, and a guy that I think, don't know if they have to trade up to get him, but they might possibly have to if they really, really like this player, because his draft stock is just going through the roof, and that is Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle out of Ole Miss, 6'3", 304, PFF grade this season of 88.9, eighth out of 895 defensive linemen. Incredibly twitchy, penetrating style of defensive lineman. Kind of reminds you a little bit of Ed Oliver, but I think he's bigger than Ed. Ole Miss, if you watched him on film, this is from Daniel Jeremiah, they slanted him quite often in their defensive scheme, created some easy wins early in the rush and the pass. As a pass rusher, he gets off the ball and gets off the ball with urgency. He can roll his hips. He can jolt blockers. He flashes a violent hunt move and can redirect with ease. He needs to improve his vision and awareness, though. And basically, he's kind of right now as a young player coming out of the SEC, has that case of, as Carl Mock, my old offensive line coach, used to call it, a blind dog in a meat house. He is off the ball and going. Sometimes he'll run past ball carriers. maybe lacks complete or total awareness at times because he's so just tunnel visioned and beating the guy across from him. But if you look at him, he wins a lot of battles. Sometimes he fails to win the war because he doesn't locate the football, and you got to locate the football. Against the run, he can generate negative plays because he can shoot gaps and get upfield. He gets caught and washed at times. A lot of that is if you're not setting your feet, once you get past the line of scrimmage, a yard or 2 yards, defensive linemen are taught to settle their feet and settle down, find the football. He just keeps going like a dog chasing a car down the side of the street. But overall, Nolan's an extremely talented, disruptive defensive lineman. He hasn't even come close to reaching his potential. If he lands in the right spot, he can emerge as one of the better players in this draft class. As we go to future Big O shows and we break down positions, I will continue to watch more and more film on Nolan. But like I said earlier, all these draft assessments I'm reading you today are from the NFL Network's Daniel Jeremiah. So those are 5 players that I think are guys that the Bills could possibly trade up for. Whether it's, I think, like I said earlier, I'm not saying they have to go to 15, but I'm saying I think 15 is kind of the ceiling of if they really, really like a guy where they could get to. But obviously they could trade up a couple spots, 4 or 5 spots, whatever, depending if that's what Bean wants to do, because there is a ton of value in this draft. So just something I wanted to get into today here on the Big O Show as we go on throughout April as we work towards the draft. We'll get into the cornerback spot, defensive line spot. We'll break down positions of need for the Bills, as well as we'll probably do a show on maybe players you haven't even thought about, positions where we think they're solidified, and positions where we believe that, why would we pick a draft pick there? Well, there are reasons why, and we'll get into that as well. So anyway, thanks for joining me here on the Big O Show, powered by Believe, here on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network. We'll be back next Wednesday, 8 Eastern, 7 Central Time. As always, I appreciate you folks. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, review the show, rate the show, and tell your friends as we roll into this 2025 season. So thanks for watching. Check us on all major podcasting networks tomorrow morning if you want to catch a show on your drive into work, or if you're just hanging out for the day and you want to hear some great Buffalo Bills content. But again, as always, folks, appreciate you. Much love. Go Bills.
I'm still the same damn